Hi guys, and welcome to today's task. For today's task, I am doing something I've always wanted to do, but have never really known how to do until I did a little research on YouTube like you're doing now. I'm going to be rebuilding a carburetor for a Tecumseh motor for an old Troy-Bilt tiller that happens to be my father-in-law's. Now, this same motor and carburetor was what was on my go-kart when I was a little boy, but I did not know how to rebuild it, and I wish I would have. So I've learned how now, and I want to show you what I did to make this carburetor run so you'll know how to do it for yourself. Okay, the first thing we want to do is shut the fuel line off. If it is shut off-able, this one may not be, so we may have to plug it. Next thing, we want to take the filters off. That filter has seen some better days, so I did get a new one, and I'll tell you this right now, I took the model number off of the motor, went down to a actual small engine repair or like a lawnmower store, not a box store. And I'm not against box stores, but they just don't carry the parts you need for these. You got to go to an actual repair store. You need to go to a store that carries Troy-Bilt or Toro or some of these older models, and they're going to have the parts you need because they are still available even though this motor is 30 plus years old or older. So you're going to want to get in contact with one of those kinds of stores, and I got all my parts for maybe 20 bucks. I think I was like 22, 23 bucks. That's pretty cheap. So next I'm going to take this plate off. And any of the bolts that I'm pulling out of these plates, I'm going to just put right back in place because I don't want to get them confused with other bolts and try to figure out where they're from. All right, so that I'm not dealing with extra gas, I'm going to pinch that gas line so I don't keep feeding gas. Now on the bottom of these carburetors, there's a bleeder valve that we can get rid of all that old fuel. So we're going to bleed that guy. We may have to twist it on some of them. Back it out. We're going to let all that dirty, bad gas go, and that's actually one of our pins that we are going to be replacing. Now we can actually take the carburetor off, I think. We should be good to pull it off. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually undo these two first instead of the carburetor itself. There's going to be a lot of nuts and bolts you're going to be undoing right here, so remember, put them back where you got them so that we're just not missing things later on. So after I pull this guy off, break this loose. Hopefully it breaks loose. There we go. There is our carburetor. Since the camera wasn't recording when I took all this apart, I'm going to show you what I took apart. This was the initial piece that goes from the carburetor into the motor, and it's just kind of a diverter, just changes where location is. Took that guy off, okay? Then next, I took out this guy. This is what holds your bowl to the carburetor itself. So you take this guy out, and actually there's a pin, the initial pin that we took out to drain the fuel sits inside of that. So we set that guy aside. Then when you open it up, you actually have your float that sits right there, and there is a needle seat that attaches to it, this guy right here, and it goes into there, and we took that guy out. We also took one of our other needles, and I'm not sure if that's an idle screw or what that is, but I know it adjusts fuel. We took that guy out, but you do need to be careful because there is a small brass washer. I don't know if the kit has the brass washer, but I know the kit has a new one of those. So all of these pieces are replaceable, but the float and the pin that holds the float in is not, at least with this kit. You can buy those, but I'm not replacing those. They don't need it. So everything is out of our carburetor now, and now it's time to, I want to just kind of clean things off a little bit, scrub it up, and then we can start putting our pieces back together. It's really simple how this goes back together and how easily it comes apart. The next step is we're going to clean this out and kind of spray some carb cleaner in there, because this is carb cleaner and this is a carburetor and it's excellent cleaner. We're going to spray a little bit down in that middle. I can put that nozzle right on there. Get it coming out of there. Kind of any of the jet areas. I want to make sure the other jet we pulled out. Okay, that feels good. Now I'm going to also take a little bit and spray it on the outside. And it might be best to do it opposite. Kind of spray this thing off, get all that dirt moving, and then spray these out. As simple as it seems, is a clean carburetor. I do want to look at the bowl. The bowl looks pretty good. Now it's time to reassemble. So now we open up our carb repair kit. Now, don't be alarmed if there's parts you don't use out of the repair kit. That's okay and pretty normal. This pin is new one. This is the old one, but the old one has the spring on it. I'm going to put the spring on the new one, so it's good to go. It didn't come with a new brass, so maybe, oh, that's the old one right there. So we want to take that gasket out of there. That one's bad. Here is our new one. So I'm going to put them in on order, the way they're going to go into our fitting there. We know that the brass will be the very last one, and then the rubber gasket. So I'm going to put it in, and that's how we're going to line it up. This is our air. So you need a few things for a motor to work. You need fuel, air, and ignition. So we know we get ignition from our spark plug, which I know is good. And then air is allowed in, and that kind of adjusts our air. I'm gonna back that guy out a little bit. Maybe it was a little tight. And then fuel, and fuel is what we're working on now. So now I'm gonna take our needle valve. That guy will stay there. Put this guy along. There we go. And then our needle. Now the needle comes with a very, very fine piece of wire, and it just clips in there like that, and then the needle slips over and onto yeah, okay. Now that's our needle seat, and all that does is just open and for fuel. When fuel opens up or is called for, that's what that brings in. Okay, next on the list we can actually make sure our gasket's on good. We can put our float back on. And then this guy. This guy is brand new. This is the old one. This is our new one. It does come with a gasket, so we're going to want to put a new gasket on there. And you can see the old gasket on this guy, kind of broken up. Get that guy seated tight. And then this is our fuel adjustment. So we may or may not have to make much of an adjustment there, but let's go over this. Bad parts. Now these are other little parts that come with. You may or may not have to replace them. This carburetor doesn't call for that. That is another pin, gasket. Some of the parts get used, some don't. That's okay. So now, believe it or not, we're ready to bolt this guy back together here. Now we can go back to our motor. Now we just put our carburetor right back on, just the way we found it. I'm going to try and get that fuel line lined up there. Nice and tight. That guy on. Unclamp it. Let's see what we got. Now, this air filter's no good. Luckily another one was able to come with it. Old and new. I think there's a slight difference. Maybe. Goes on just like so. Okay, that carburetor is back and good, and I do know there is good fuel in there because I did take the time to put some really good fuel in the other day when I got this started. It did run, but it just wouldn't stay running very well because of probably the condition of the carburetor. So depending on how things are adjusted, we may have to work with it a little bit. All right, you guys, I'm going to show you that we got it up and running. So one thing I did do was take it back to factory adjustments, which they say is this screw, your air screw, all the way in minus 2 turns. Then they say this screw right here, your fuel screw, is all the way in minus between 1 and 2 screws. And I started at 1 and the engine was actually revving really, really hard. It wasn't bringing the RPMs down no matter what I did. So I backed it out another turn and it sounded better. So I went another half turn. So factory settings says roughly 2 to 2.5 turns. 2.5 seems to be the money right now. So it looks like it's running well. Let me show you. That's running a lot better now. And I did take the time to back this out a little bit more until the idle felt where I wanted it to be. This is technically your idle screw that says how low you want the RPMs to go, but that's all the way backed out and it can't get any lower and it still wasn't. So it tells me too much fuel is being poured in at once. So you back that guy out until you get that idle right where you want it. I think we're good to go now.